In this presentation, we will study our second core principle, which states, we are all created equal and endowed by the Creator with essential rights and responsibilities as individuals as well as for the common good. The second core principle reflects the Declaration of Independence and its affirmation of equality and endowed rights. Frequently, the deeper meaning of this first principle is overlooked. Notice the Declaration emphasizes the word created when it speaks of equality. We're not just equal, we are created equal. It means that our state of equality is not just an outcome of our own doing or of any external determination or intervention. Human equality is something innate. It is something, as we learned in the previous presentation on core principle number 1, that is permanently an attribute of our own spiritual nature and a unique intrinsic value that we all have in common. So then, why is the word created so essential in defining equality? Why not just assert that humans are equal, as did the French in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, and just leave it at that? Equality in of itself is not necessarily beneficial or desirable. For example, all prisoners in the penitentiary are equal, but are not in a circumstance that is in harmony with their essential humanity. When humanity is equally miserable, equality has little or no value. However, when the word created is applied to the notion of equality, its implication is great. It implies that the Creator intended us to be equal. Thus, this intrinsic value of equality is a direct manifestation of the Creator's divine motives and aspirations in having created us. Naturally, we are drawn to the sacred texts of our own faith tradition so as to further elucidate what are those divine motives and aspirations. In this way, we would better illuminate essential values. We would also establish a link of cause and effect between faith and the virtues of society. In the case of America's founders, their faith tradition had revealed to them that God had created us in His image, and that His motive for creating pertained to love. Thus, we were able to enjoy equality because the Creator's motives for creating were parental in nature. And as a direct result of this, we are endowed with the inner quality of children, the children of the Creator, and the world was subsequently so loved as His very own family, created to be one family under God. Thus, the equality of humanity as one family is the outcome of the quality of the Creator's love toward humanity. It is equality on the highest level. As God's image, the parental character of God's own love is transferred to humanity at our creation. Thus, a people so created have endowed to them a rightful claim to a civil society and a just government. Because we have been blessed with this essential quality, we are therefore entitled to essential rights. There is also a moral duty, a responsibility we bear for having been created equal. It is the extending core value that compels us to regard every other person as equally valuable and worthy of love and respect. Because each person has also been created equal and is subject to the same motives and intentions of the Creator, each one takes on the inherent value of God's own child. And if that's so, then every man and woman is, in our most essential natural state, brother and sister. Once a person is awakened to their essential nature, they become increasingly aware as to whether their surrounding society is reflective or contrary to that intrinsic identity and value. In almost every case, as an enlightened people were awakened to their true nature and value, there was a subsequent stirring within the soul, a hope for a society that would more perfectly embrace and be reflective of their newfound identity and value. It was an internal spark that manifested an expression of faith, not as dogma, but as action, inspired by a new passion for a society that would reflect their true nature and thus be pleasing to God. For America's pilgrims, this awakening caused them, at great risk and sacrifice, to leave their homelands and venture into the harsh unknown in search of a land that could accommodate the newfound dignity of the children of God. They set out to establish a nation that would be no less than a shining city upon a high hill, a beacon of hope for all humanity. Henceforth, that nation would be a promised land bound in a covenant with God. It would be the oasis for all who labored under oppressive tyrants and governments that were inattentive to the divine core of humanity and the endowment of fundamental rights. The story of America's first English settlers is well known, but we should also remember that America had another pilgrim narrative, although rarely or properly considered. The tragic path tread by the people who suffered the indignity of slavery in America has also contributed just as much to the spiritual heritage that sustains the nation to this very day. These forgotten pilgrims came not by choice, but instead while chained in tight confines and pitch darkness of slave ships, vessels that were presumed to be consecrated to Christ. Slave traders, oblivious to their hypocrisy, proudly named their ships of iniquity with such names as John the Baptist and Brotherhood, names that belied their wicked trade and masked its inhumanity. These American pilgrims found a different path toward the shining city of equality. It was one stained in their own blood and tears. While bearing the chains of slavery, they secretly defied the rule of the plantation and at the risk of their lives discovered within the sacred texts of the religion of their oppressors a divine promise. There was a redemptive power in the path of undeserved suffering. With this faith, they carried on in the knowledge that by their stripes, their blood, their sweat and tears, a nation, a promised land would be redeemed, and it would be a land of liberty, justice, and equality for all. All of America's pilgrims, founding fathers and mothers, men and women of faith, are the forebearers of the American dream of one nation of equality under God. Long before and after the Declaration was penned, these faithful pioneers were digging deep the wells of liberty. As we are all created equal, the second core principle goes on to also affirm that our rights are endowed to us by the Creator. Thus, we are not only created equal, but we also are granted essential rights and responsibilities as individuals, as well as for the common good. Before the Declaration, human rights were to be distributed in accordance to the interests of a monarch, the state, or a legislative fiat. Rights were dispersed in accordance with one's station, family line, or social standing. The aristocrat and the peasant, being of different social positions, were thus afforded certain rights corresponding to their social standing. Those rights were static and unchangeable. There was little or no way to escape the social definitions and the constraints imposed at birth. The principle that each person was endowed directly by God with the same rights was unprecedented and revolutionary. Our rights were no longer subject to the good graces of a king or legislative decision. As a result, for governments to be just, they would have to govern at the consent of the people. From that moment forward, a proper government authority would be derived from the people and thus would have to be constrained so as to remain reconciled with the consent granted to a government of, by, and for the people. Sometimes, though, the people can be remiss in the awareness of the responsibilities inherent with our endowed rights. As Thomas Jefferson warned, can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God? Thus, our second principle emphasizes that in having rights, we also must bear an individual responsibility for the sake of the common good. Although we have individual rights, it does not mean that we are free from the necessary obligations for the sake of the greater benefit of society. That is why a virtuous people are so essential to a free society. It is virtue, not government coercion, that republics demand. As James Monroe had said, republics demand virtue. Monarchies could rely on coercion and dazzling splendor to suppress self-interest or factions. Republics relied on the goodness of the people to put aside private interests for public good. Without this abiding virtue, then freedom would become licentiousness, as people without virtue pursued their own self-interests or factions, abandoning the common good and eventually pulling society apart. As a virtuous member of a family, I willingly defer my own interests for the sake of the family. As a family within a community, the family freely contributes towards the betterment of the community as we love our neighbor as ourselves. This intrinsic value compels us to love our nation and offer our selfless service to her, to do our civic duty, and to volunteer to participate in all aspects of good citizenship. James Madison once said, "Before any man can be considered as a member of civil society, he must be considered as a subject of the governor of the universe." He was telling us that when we take moral responsibility in concert with the intentions and aspirations of the Creator as described by our personal faith, we naturally and then freely live a life toward the greater good of society. In this way, America would truly stand as that shining city upon a hill. For this reason, we uphold as the second of CAR's core principles, we are all created equal and are endowed by the Creator with essential rights and responsibilities as individuals as well as for the common good. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope that this presentation will inform and inspire a fruitful discussion. Have a great meeting and a great day.